ahead and put up the slides. Or sorry, the agenda. Okay, when the agenda goes up, we'll go ahead and get started. And hopefully everyone got the agenda in their email and the materials for tonight.
Walter, I'll have that for you in just a minute. I'm having some technical issues.
Okay, no problem. All right, there we go. So let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully everyone can see that. We can see, whoops, we could see most of it and now it's blocked out. There we go. That's it. All right. And Lisa, if you could expand the screen, I think that will work, but I think we're good to go. So we have a couple of big items on the agenda tonight. First is the public facilities finalization or endorsement, wrapping that up. And then we have the first part of the land use chapter. So everything else is I think going to be quick. So any questions on the agenda for tonight's task force meeting? Any questions? Okay.
If Lisa.
Oh, Gary, yes.
Lisa, Lynn is having trouble logging in. Could you see if? Sorry.
Yes, no, I sent her a new link, so I'll see what I can help with.
Thank you.
Lisa,
Okay.
and I'm having a hard time too. I had to log in on my cell phone. I'm not sure if there's a problem with the link somewhere or what.
Okay, thanks, Shane.
I think that just WebEx has its quirks sometimes because everyone has the same link that was sent out. So, but I'll see what I can do on this end.
Yeah, I'm trying to restart and see if that'll let me in.
Okay, well, very good. Well, and I realize Shane is working through his cell phone, and then Lynn is looking to get on. Right, then. And I guess Lynn is back from her travels, is that correct?
Yeah, she's here.
Okay, good. So it's not a broadband issue.
No, it shouldn't be.
Okay, good. Well, Charles, do you want to go ahead and get started as Lynn is getting
Yes.
on? let's do that. Charles, why don't you take it away? And I think, Charles, you'll be sharing your screen, is that right?
No, there's no need.
Oh,
Um, I am sorry to say, I don't think we're going to finalize this tonight. And which I am very disappointed, by the way. But let me explain what happened. Um, what's the old ad slogan? You asked for it, you got it, or something's that Toyota. So we asked for comments from the three county agencies. And we got it, albeit they all came in over the weekend, one this morning. And the one from Parks and Recreation is substantive. And I was talking to Chris Chapperton, who can chime in if he wants, but he said that the Parks people really very strongly want us to wait until the Parks and Open Space section is finalized before we finalize the public facilities. And he said the reason is that the sections need to be consistent, and the parks wants to come in and make comments on the open space, parks and open space. And I can just let you all know what I think their big issue has to do with that whole thing of what you count in the inventory of parks. And I only had like a minute to read it because again, it came in like, yeah, I work for a living, so I didn't have a chance to review it when I got it this morning. But I think their big issue is counting facilities that are outside of the Reston territory. And I think that there's the whole issue, do you count them or not count them? And one school of thought is you count them if people in Reston use them and have access to them. I guess things like Lake Fairfax and so on. So I don't really, to me, it's six one, half dozen the other. So I'm sorry, but this is what has happened. And I think they also had some comments about the RCC financing, this is the parks people. And I think they just took RCC out altogether as a funding source, I believe, in their edits, and just said that's not the kind of thing that belongs in a comp plan. Which I agree with them. I mean, I have no objections to anything they're saying, but I need to go through it, and if we follow this path, we need to delay this until we have the parks and open space, unless we want to do some kind of tentative review and vote on it, subject to, but it's not really finalizing it. So I can go either way. I personally would like to just call it a wrap. It's this just shouldn't be taking this long. But this is all came to me this morning, and they want to wait till the Parks Committee, the Parks plan is discussed, and I think they want to be on that call. And I told you what they want to talk about. So I don't know, thoughts, comments?
Just a question, Charles. You mentioned that you had heard from a couple agencies. Did any other agency offer substantive concerns?
None, I haven't had a chance to go through them in detail. I don't think they were substantive. I think it was more like you gave them more time to edit. And I think their inventories were more complete and accurate. So I think that what they offered for the fire and rescue and schools is more accurate than before. But I haven't had a chance to dive into them in detail. I need time to compile it and send it out. I don't think theirs will be a big deal.
Thank you.
It is
Sure.
possible, though, that when I go through it, maybe they will turn out to be, maybe the fire and rescue said, let's get rid of fire stations in Reston or something. But I haven't had a chance to see that yet, to review it, but it didn't look substantive on first pass.
Okay, well, Charles, it
Chris
sounds
might
like,
have some thoughts on it too, but
yeah, Charles, it sounds like you haven't even had a chance to really read through all the comments yet or suggestions.
no, I
So,
have not. I'm sorry.
No, no problem.
If I'd gotten them Saturday, I would have looked through them.
I understand.
I think you give them more time and they're gonna spend the weekend editing.
Well, Charles,
Because they care.
one thought, and if task force members want to throw something in, please do. But I'm thinking that, Charles, perhaps if you have time by tomorrow's task force meeting to at least review what all the comments were that came in, and then make a recommendation whether to go forward or wait at that point.
And unfortunately, I can't, of all these meetings, I cannot attend tomorrow's. It's
You can't come tomorrow. Okay,
for my cluster and I'm on the board.
got it.
Can try to like work on it tonight and compile them and send it. But I won't be able to participate in the discussion except maybe at 9:30.
Okay, okay, that sounds pretty late.
Is the
Gary,
meeting tomorrow 7 to 9?
it is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
Right in the same time as our board meeting.
got
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
Just on that point alone, I have a regularly scheduled board meeting at the same time tomorrow at 7. I told Lisa, and if it ends, I can join, but I might not be able to participate at all tomorrow for the same reason. Just wanted to
Understood.
share that.
Thank you,
Walter.
Alvarez.
Walter, this is Bill Penniman.
Hey, Bill.
Yeah, could I just comment, since I won't be able to attend tomorrow either,
Please.
and some of the others are getting tight, so in case this comes back up when I'm not here, I just want to say, as far as the RCC is concerned, the RCC regulates the RCC, the task force doesn't. And so the excluding RCC language to me is utterly unacceptable. I thought Charles's language was fine. Going back to the pre-excluding RCC language would be fine. But for those of you who don't follow this stuff so closely, I just want you to know that in 2019, RCC conducted a survey of residents in Reston. It was conducted by the University of Virginia's survey research group, and 2/3 of people, and actually over 80% by one count, support RCC taking on an operational role if it's built by somebody else. A majority was supportive of RCC even paying for it. So before the task force tries to step in and tell the RCC what it should or shouldn't do, it just shouldn't do that. The other thing, I just want to reassure people, contrary to some comment that 9 people can do all this stuff, the fact is any capital project proposed by the RCC has to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. It's got to go through intense review. It can't encumber the county with debt obligations that it doesn't want to be there for, because it's going to go against its overall financial situation. It's got to be subject to a 3-year financial plan and all sorts of requirements, including, of course, continued consultation with the community. So, that's what I would say.
I hear you, and as I recall, the parks comment is that this is a comp plan. It's about land use and things like that. So, and that if you you touch it all into the area of financing and you get too detailed, it suddenly elevates it to be something that shouldn't even be addressed in the plan. So I think they had recommended just saying under the funding part, it would be Fairfax County and private entities. That's how they left it. And suggested just taking RCC out of that language, not because they don't agree or disagree with RCC's role in financing. It's because they feel it shouldn't be discussed as part of the comprehensive plan. It's a different area.
But as I said, the language that was in there before that simply referred to Fairfax County and contributions from private developers, that didn't bother me. It was once somebody decided to insert excluding RCC
Got it.
that it pushed the button.
Good.
So if you go back to the original language, I'm fine with that.
Everyone will be
Or I'll
happy.
take your language, either one.
Yep, and for those who think RCC shouldn't be involved, I think their point is that the comprehensive plan is not where you discuss this, could actually be counterproductive because it elevates it unnecessarily. The only other change they had was they wanted to point out it's a visual, can be visual arts also. It's not
That's
just
true.
art, so I was going to add that in.
Yeah, I mean, the RCC has been conducting multiple meetings with the public on what might go into it, and visual arts were also part of it. Again, I didn't fly spec that because where this is general language, and I didn't think it was intended to limit what the county or RCC or anybody else might choose to do in the long run. That's all.
So I'm
Thank you.
gonna, plan is then, I'm gonna try to like get all this wrapped up tonight, send it out to the committee tonight. And if I can come in tomorrow, I'll do it. I'll try to join. Maybe we can, but we still have to supposedly wait till the parks meeting anyway.
Yeah, and Charles, if you got a conflict tomorrow, so maybe we need to look at next week to get the public facilities back on the agenda, with the motion from you. For Lynn and anybody else who joined late, the news is that Charles got late comments from county staff from several different agencies, and so we're not going to be ready to move forward with an endorsement tonight, at least. I think that's where the discussion's going.
Right.
So,
And are we all
go
in
ahead.
agreement then to not vote on this until after the presentation? Again, if it was up to me personally, we'd vote on it tonight. But this, they would like us to wait till the night that we do Parks and Open Space, and after that one, we would harmonize on the spot and vote on that one and kick two out the door. That's what I think they are hoping.
Anyone have any
Charles,
thoughts
this
on
is-
that?
Yeah, this is David.
David?
I think it's prudent to wait. They've asked politely to hold off until they can attend and hold off until after the work on the other, or at the same time as the other unit. It just makes sense to do that. In fact, if you've got, I'm not sure that it's necessary for you to hustle through editing process and send it out tonight or tomorrow, because we're not going to realistically, we're not going to discuss it until later.
Thank you, David. And I do see, Lynn, you've had your hand up for a while, and then I see Alvarez has his real
Oh, yeah.
hand up.
So thank you, Walter. I actually had my virtual and my real hand up,
Okay,
but
I didn't see the real one.
yeah, I want to thank Lisa for getting me into panelist mode so I can talk and be seen. But I think in terms of the chapter that Charles has so expertly put together, if this is the one issue that is remaining as it pertains to the Performing Arts Center and Reston Community Center, is that the only thing that's outstanding?
I haven't had a chance to review the other comments. It's the only
Okay,
thing
all
that
right,
could
I understand.
And then I will say I was in the parks meeting, Parks and Open Space, and they heavily debated the issue of including whether you include or don't count or don't count things outside Reston.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
But
I
think
think,
it's, yeah,
yeah, I just think that, it seems to me that we already voted on the language that would go into the public facilities chapter
yeah.
as it pertains to a performing arts center. And I don't know that one individual, I can't recall what the vote was, but I don't know that one individual can come in and change the the vote from the task force by saying I wasn't there and therefore my vote carries more than the weight of everybody
Nah,
else.
doesn't work that way.
Okay, just making
Not for
sure.
my chapter.
Okay.
Does anyone know if the current Parks and Open Space Plan draft includes the, it acknowledges external, like things outside of Reston as part of the parks and open space inventory, or does it exclude them? Does anyone know?
Well,
This is Jennifer, and it does not. Both the subcommittee that met on Parks Open Space chapter voted to not include anything outside of Reston boundaries, as we have for every other chapter in the Reston Comprehensive Plan. I've explained that to staff multiple times now, and that's how the task force voted when we voted on the interim parks
Well,
draft.
I suspect the parks people have an issue with that, and they want to address you and possibly talk about that. And then, yeah,
but that is kind of, I'm sorry, I put my hand up.
If,
Gary, go ahead. You were nice about it, so go ahead.
Sorry. It seems to me that, you know, we've been through that before. We've discussed it multiple times, and we're not going to include those. And we should go forward, you know, with this as currently expressed in the Parks and Open Space. And we've been through public facilities, and we should just, you know, I don't know that there's anything left out here that needs to, you know, go further. If something does go awry in Parks and Open Space, we can come back and deal with it. But I think we, you know, moving forward, we're pretty much in agreement on this chapter. And following on to what Lynn says, and maybe John Carter wants to jump into those other, you know, Lake Fairfax and so forth. But
Yeah, but before John goes, Alvarez, I skipped over you. Let me, Alvarez, go ahead, and then
If I understand it, Rex has asked us to wait until something else happens because it may have an impact on their position on this. And it seems to me, even though we voted, the question is, are we voting now? That we should wait. And if they don't have something, then we'll just go through it. We've already agreed on it. It won't be an issue. But if they do, it seems like we ought to let them say their say before we take a final vote. Anyway, I think, based on my understanding of it, I think we should wait.
okay, thanks, Alvarez. John, did you have any comments? I also see Bill has his hand up.
You know, we've all struggled with this. I don't know that you want to expand Reston's boundaries to include Lake Fairfax and those other parks. That would be, and then the other question is, what would you be recommending for these sites? The Lake Fairfax, those other parks are on the land use plan. They're outside Reston, but it's not a matter of whether they're there or not. I just don't know what you would recommend. And it seems like we ought to stay out of, the parks has their own notions of how to do a master plan. They do their own master plans. I don't know that we want.
you're muted.
I just don't know that we want to make some Parks has their own process. And I don't know that
Yeah.
we want to leap into their process and start recommending things for their parks, especially when they're outside of Reston. They are shown on the land use plan. So I don't know what you do with the parks outside. I mean, what we recommend
Well-
that they're only for Reston residents. I don't, what would we recommend, more soccer fields, or what would be our recommendation?
Well, this is, and what happened is that they had given their comments, so we're all happy. And then we simply asked them a very simple yes, no type of question of whether the verbal description of a Reston recreation facility matched number 19 in the table. That's all we wanted to know. And then suddenly they come back over the weekend with more editing and this issue comes up. So they kind of like they changed their position on this. And I don't know why. And that seems to be part of it. So
I understand the friction. They don't want to be left out, and I get that, but I just don't know what we would recommend for
Yeah.
their parks, and I don't know that that's our job to be recommending changes to Lake Fairfax Park or what was it? Those other two parks.
Well,
Stratton
but they made the ask second time around is what I'm saying. In other words, they could have told us this, like
But yeah,
3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. And now
Um,
suddenly this comes up when we simply wanted, ask a simple clarifying question. Now we're like having to delay this.
I would
Yeah,
leave it the way we have it, so
I do see a couple of hands up, and then let's see if we can wrap this up one way or the other. Jan and then David. Go ahead, Jan.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Alvarez's position. I think that I don't see how it hurts for us to wait until Parks and Rec. We pretty well know public facilities. I don't think it would be time consuming for us to just go ahead and make a couple changes or not and just ratify it after we hear what they say. In the interest of time, I really don't think that's going to take away from our timetable that much. Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Then David.
I agree with Jan and Alvarez. Let them talk. We don't have to, in John's argument, whatever they say, we don't necessarily have to agree with it. And so I think it's just prudent they've requested it. They have a legitimate reason to be part of the discussion. Let's just go with that.
Okay. Anyone have any objections to holding off a vote tonight to basically at least look at what the recommendations are at a future meeting after the Parks and Open Space as described by Charles? Anyone have any objections to that?
This is Michelle. I
Yes,
think we just
Michelle.
need to vote on this. I think we need to vote on this. We already know that they think we should include parks that we can't offer recommendations on. We've already voted on that as a group, that we're not going to include things outside of the boundaries of the plan. I don't know why we're waiting. This is not, I mean, I think there's quite a few of us who want to be done. So let's wrap some things up here.
And
What
I
is
want to,
the,
as
what is
the one that's
the, what
leading
would the task force
park,
like to do?
as leading on the parks chapter, is not going to be something next week that we won't be done parks after one meeting with them this week. So just letting you guys know, it's going to be a couple weeks. It's going to take a few meetings with them.
All right, what is the
You
pleasure
feel
of the
the same
task
way as
force?
Michelle, Jennifer, we ought to move forward.
If I could comment,
Yeah, please.
I don't feel strongly, but it seems to me that what the Parks Authority, when they plan their things, they think they're serving Reston. And if we don't even acknowledge they have these facilities that are right next to us, the people from Reston are benefit from it and are expected to use, it's not that we have to plan. They just want to mention it, I suspect. I don't think they're asking for more than that. But I think we should give them the chance to explain their position.
I do too.
Okay. Motion on the floor, or should we just move on to the next topic?
Let's move on.
Let's vote.
Okay, I'm hearing vote. Somebody putting a motion on the table, or are we moving on?
Let's move on.
I move that we vote on this chapter. There.
I second.
All right, so the motion's been
And
made.
will we-
I'm sorry, I
discussion?
don't want to, I do not want to vote on this chapter with the revised language from one member that has overridden the vote of the task force in terms of the language that is included for one section of the chapter. I don't think that's right.
Lynn, are you referring to the RCC language?
Yes, I am, Bill.
Okay, well, let me just say, as the representative of the RCC, I was somewhat surprised to see a couple days later that RCC had been brought in on something they were not mentioned in before. I would have submitted a written explanation in advance of the meeting had I known that was coming. So please
Well, I
don't.
don't think changing the language outside of after the task force had voted on the language, I don't think coming back is, I think it's disingenuous to the work of the committee.
Well, thank you for the compliment, but I would say that it's appropriate for the representative from the RCC to have an opportunity to comment and participate in that discussion. And
Yes.
all I've asked
I
is
agree
that
with that, Bill. I agree that you should have the opportunity to comment on, but it is not the final say as to what goes in the chapter. I think
So-
it should not be included.
So I would just note also that the task force had previously voted for language, which I said I'm perfectly happy to live with, which is to say Fairfax County and private developers with no mention of RCC. I was the one who was surprised that somebody decided to try and exclude the RCC. In any event, I think it's appropriate.
I'd like
Go
to
back to
amend the motion. In the motion, I would like to say that we'll revert to the original language where we simply don't mention RCC at all in the funding section.
I will
So
second,
the original
I will
wording.
second Michelle's motion with that amendment. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to weigh in on this. I think that I think we need to see what they say. I don't like the idea of rushing things. I like to do a complete job and know that we've really covered all the bases and we've heard all the things. I feel as though we're just rushing this through just to get a vote on the table so we can say we've checked that one off. I think that you need to do this properly, and that I don't think that having to wait until Parks is mentioned and then quickly adding this is a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Bill, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a clarification, Charles. The excluding RCC language was inserted in two different places, and I assume you're saying go back to the original language in both places. That's right.
Correct.
Yeah, and Charles, if I could ask, if the task force is going to vote on this, can that be put on the screen? I don't know if somebody could, as the version.
Yeah.
Sorry, Charles.
Let us see now.
I think I might have it, but
Lisa, do you
Charles, how
have
about
it?
I put up?
I'm going to try to find the what was sent to me this morning that has it all now. Here we go. This is the Word version. Okay, I'm loading it up, and hopefully I can share this. Okay, I'm going in and to share. What do? I just hit the share button. Here we go. Okay, and it's not giving me an option to share. Is there someone need to activate that for me, or?
I don't know why you can't share.
Yeah.
You at the top it says file, edit, share.
Yeah, file and under share, it's my windows are not live.
Charles, why don't you email it to me and I'll pull it up.
And Charles, while you're doing that, I see Alvarez's hand up. Go ahead, Alvarez.
In the original wording, was there a consideration to adding RCC? Was that even discussed? You said no?
Not even discussed.
Okay, so if it wasn't discussed, and now RCC saying we should be, we've never even considered yes or no. Whether the wording may have been put in prematurely, but that's something that we should consider whether it should be added or not. And
that's not what happened. That's not exactly what happened. Originally, it simply mentioned RCC wasn't mentioned as a funding option. Then someone wanted to put excluding RCC, Then we changed it to and RCC. That was my last edit. No one had voted on that. And now we want to just go back to the original where we simply don't mention RCC at all.
But is there an issue whether RCC should be added or not? And did we ever look at?
I think what the thought is it's not something for the comp plan.
Right. So I'm content as long as there's not an exclusion that tries to
Right.
dictate to the RCC what it can do in the future.
So I think Bill's okay. And we went through it without that in it.
Okay. All right, that maybe that's been resolved. But again, I still think we should wait. I guess we're gonna vote on whether we should wait.
That's why we're going to vote.
We're gonna vote.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
And I
Bill?
Go on, Bill.
Yeah, just a question. If somebody wants to wait, even if they actually like what's in here, they want to wait, they vote no.
Yeah, if you want to wait,
kind of
what I would
awkward.
recommend is a substitute motion to defer endorsement. And so it's a clean vote on whether to wait or not. So Bill, I don't know if you want to make that motion or something.
Sure, I'll make a substitute motion of deferring consideration pending.
We have to vote on the motion first, and then you can do another
Yeah.
motion.
No, while the motion's under play, a substitute motion can be made at any point. That motion's been made, but it's not been seconded. Is there a second?
I
I'm
second.
gonna second.
All right, that motion to, a substitute motion has been made to defer decision on the public facilities chapter. It has been seconded. So now I'm going to ask for everybody to vote. Those of you that want to delay consideration of public facilities, I'm going to ask you to raise your electronic hand.
How do we do that?
Discussion.
Oh, yes, discussion. Yes, thank you,
You
Charles.
know, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but sometimes I'm worried that the reason for including things outside of Reston is then we don't need as much parkland in Reston. Therefore, some of our current parkland could be used for other purposes. That's my concern. So that's why I like keeping it the way it is. Now we can use Lake Fairfax Park, you don't need like Barron Cameron because we can go to Lake Fairfax instead,
But isn't that a speculation? We don't know what they're gonna say.
right? So,
That's right.
So we don't know what they're gonna say. It could be minimal, it could be anything, but it seems to me they
Yeah.
ought to have the privilege of saying it.
well, they could have said it 3 weeks ago, but they changed
Yeah.
their mind when we asked them to clarify whether number 19 in the table matched the recreations. And when we asked them that question, they came back with this.
Let's call the question.
Okay.
All
Let's
right,
vote.
question's been called. So the vote is
I
to
have-
whether,
I have my hand up.
okay, Jennifer, go ahead and then we'll vote.
I'll vote against deferring this, but I still think it's an illegal Roberts Rules motion because it's counter to the motion that's in the table. I get that you can amend a motion, but this is in complete opposite of what the original motion was for. You can't do that.
You can do a substitute motion.
You can do.
So, all right. So, but thank you, Jennifer. So the substitute motion on the table is to defer consideration or endorsement until a future meeting. So all in favor of that deferring, please put your electronic hands up, and then I'm going to ask for those opposed. But all in favor of deferring this, put your electronic hands up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I see 10. I think I got that right. Okay, all opposed to the motion to defer. So all those who do not want to defer the motion, please put your hand up electronically in 5, 4, 3.
Gary should have
2.
taken his hand down. He's voting twice.
Wait, who? Somebody's voted twice.
Gary
Okay.
was for it. And now he's.
Okay, let's make sure everybody has their, sorry, thank you, Albert. So let's make sure everybody has their hand down. Okay, let's get their hand down. Okay, now I'm going to ask for everybody who is opposed to deferring decision tonight on the public facilities chapter. Everybody opposed, please put your hand up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I see 7 hands. Okay, so the motion passes and this item will be deferred to a future meeting. Can I just say, Charles, I understand your vote most of all. I know you're ready to be done with this, and I do appreciate the work you've been doing, and
I do
I
too.
apologize for the late feedback that you got that threw this off. So anyway, thank you, Charles. I promise it'll
Okay,
be
I'll
over
wrap
soon.
up the comments, and send it out as soon as I can, so we can review and be ready for the next meeting where they will probably argue to say that we have plenty of recreation.
All right, fair enough.
You don't need all of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Charles. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so let's move on. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn. Oh, I'm sorry, we did have abstentions, but Chris, thank you for noting an abstention, so on that. But let's move on to Lynn. Lynn, this is part 1 of 2 on land use. So
Yep.
speaking of Herculean efforts, Lynn, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Well, if you want to talk about Herculean efforts, I would have to say the Land Use Working Group has been fantastic. And I mean, 2 years of working through the previous plan text and working with planning in mind. Remember, we were thinking of planning in mind. Tammy Petrine, Dennis Hayes, Gary Maupin, Jennifer Juszczyk, our planning commissioner, John Carter, as our guide and side consultant, and Michelle Kimmel. Thank you all so much for all the work that has gone into aggregating the final draft text that you all are going to be seeing tonight. So just to refresh everyone's memory, so the draft land use chapter was presented to the task force. I don't remember the date, but we took that plan text that was approved. I think there was an environmental caveat that Mr. Penniman threw into the motion, which we accepted, but it was voted upon. And we did take the draft chapter to staff. And on the staff side, I really do have to give acknowledgement to Bill Mayland, his expertise and knowledge, and I have to say encyclopedic knowledge of Fairfax County's zoning ordinances, and his contributions we wouldn't be where we are today without him. And I also want to thank Barbara Byron. I think she may have moved on. I'm not sure if she's even on tonight, but Barbara was instrumental in getting us to a position in working together where we took the original draft text that was approved by this comprehensive plan task force, brought it to staff. And what we're going to be reviewing is the final staff reviewed and working group reviewed document. So what I want to do is I'm going to start with the second half of the chapter. So tonight we're going to be reviewing village centers, convenience centers, other commercial, and Reston neighborhoods. Now, you all received the clean copy of the chapter, the redlined version of the chapter. Thank you, Bill Penniman, and the reconciliation dashboard. And what my plan is to go through the chapter for village centers, for each of those sub chapter
items, but we're going to work from the reconciliation dashboard. And that is where we had some differences of opinion with staff. So I want to bring those forward to the task force, just so that you all know what's going on. And this is a little different than what we reviewed. So I'm going to ask Lisa if you could give me permission to share. I will be happy to bring up both the chapter for the village centers and then the reconciliation dashboard. So this is something you're going to have to give me in WebEx.
Yes, just a moment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I trust everyone can see my screen.
No.
We see
No?
you. Not,
Ah,
Lynn, you have to go up to the share button. Oh,
Oh,
there
there
you
we
go.
go. There,
Oh,
that's it.
perfect.
That we
okay,
see it.
good. All right. So I just wanted to scroll through. This is what we had originally approved. And the items that you'll see pop out are some of the changes that were recommended by staff. I don't think this actually made it to the dashboard, but I wanted you all to see the contribution that staff's edits made to our final product, which we're very proud of. So this redevelopment must be preceded by extensive community engagement. This was something that Barbara Byron added, and we all agreed that that was something that we liked, and we call that reconciled. So, and you all probably all had, you took the weekend to go through these this chapter. We did have some discussion about the use of graphics and the adoption of Calibri as the font for the comprehensive plan. That is something that was met with some discussion, but we have all agreed. We did make changes to Tall Oaks Village Center. So we said that the changes that Bill Mayland suggested, that was fine, and we're calling it reconciled. We had actually said in this area that Tall Oaks no longer functioned as a village center, and staff interpreted that as Tall Oaks was no longer a village center, but it really is still a village center on the books. So we just said, okay. So this is the final language that we've adopted with staff's edits. So this is village centers. We did go through one area within Lake Anne Village Center that Bill Malin pointed out that we had neglected to include the full consolidation option. And I know we're going to get to that soon. We had the full consolidation option for land unit A as an option that was in the original draft, but we had neglected to include it in land unit D. So Bill's eagle eyes found that language was missing, so it has been added here. So thank you, Bill. And you'll see I said good catch here. So that is village centers. I don't think we have any village center. I don't think we have anything on the reconciliation dashboard that pertains to village centers. So I would ask if
actually there is
You do
one.
have on page 2.
Yeah. Village centers.
Oh, the DU. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Very good. Is that Mike?
Yeah, and David Burnell too, I think.
And I should have known that was y'all. Okay, thank you. Good catch. Perfect. So, yeah, so this was the discussion that took place between the working group and staff. And then so it's not really reconciled, but the resolution is that the task force recommends 13 to 20 dwelling units per acre. There was great discussion in the original land use that indicated that village centers would be designated as 50 persons per acre, not dwelling units. So there is a comparison, we believe, of apples to oranges, that 50 people per acre is not 50 dwelling units per acre. And we do believe that the village centers, that the dwelling unit range should be in the 13 to 20. And we also believe that that requires correction on the land use map. So if you can, I mean, you're all welcome to go back and look at the original land use map for Reston that shows village centers are 50 persons per acre, not 50 dwelling units.
Hey, Lynn, it's Mark Looney.
Hi, Mark.
I'm confused about the 50 persons per acre relative to the 3 PRC residential categories, because that doesn't line up with any of the PRC residential category density calculations. And so my impression or understanding was that the village centers were always considered high density, unless the approved development plan said otherwise, they were deemed to be high density areas, not medium or low density areas under the PRC zoning ordinance. And Barbara may remember more specifically than I do, but that was always my understanding. Was it was by interpretation they were all high density, which is not 50 persons per acre, it's 50 units per acre. And that's how they ended up at that number.
Yeah, I do not think we have agreement there. And I don't know if Barbara is on this call.
Yes, I am.
You are. Thank you. That's great.
But would you mind repeating the question?
Mark, would you
Sure.
so Barbara, I'll set the stage, and then Mark, you can add your commentary. So the land use working group feels that the dwelling unit range should be 13 to 20 units, and that the 50 dwelling units is incorrect. And we feel, as you go back and look at the land use map from original Reston, the village centers called for 50 people per acre, not 50 dwelling units per acre. Staff, on the other hand, believes that redevelopment could occur at 50 DUs per acre with an amendment to the plan. So there is I guess, a disagreement between the working group and staff in interpreting what the dwelling units versus the, interpreting that or calculating the dwelling units per acre from the 50 people per acre. So the resolution, it's not reconciled, but it is resolved within the task force working group that 13 to 20 people or dwelling units is the correct designation for village centers. Now, I'll give it over to Mark to.
There are a couple of issues there, Lynn, and I'm going to ask Bill to help me with the first one, and I'll get to the second one, or I'll do the second one first. So I would need Bill's help to answer me to help me answer the question about what the original drawing showed, because I don't remember. And as you said, he's the encyclopedia. I think the second part of what you said is correct. That actually, no matter what the task force puts in now, what the board adopts now, the board could go back in the future and do another plan amendment that could allow higher density within the limitations of the PRC district. That's a 50 use per acre. So it is possible in the future to have a future plan amendment that would allow the higher density, irrespective of what the board adopts at the end of this effort. So I think that was a little apples and oranges maybe in there.
Let me, if I could weigh in just a second. The question is,
John.
what to recommend? Do you want it at 50 units per acre, which is equivalent to the highest density in the TSAs next to the Metro Center? Or do you want it as a more appropriate, in my view, the 20 units per acre? There's also a drawing that shows the difference. If you want to look at that, you'll see. Now, Barbara's certainly right that the Board of Supervisors could change the recommendations, but the question is, what do you want to recommend for this plan? And so, so far it's 13 to 20. If you want 50, then you need to change the numbers. I wouldn't go 50. I think it doesn't fit. Just as a little more information, Lake Ann at its highest is less than 16.
So, John, I would agree with you. I mean, so what I was saying is, irrespective of what happens now, I think you're absolutely correct. The task force should decide what you want the plan for the village center to be.
Yeah.
And that should be your recommendation.
Yeah.
And that is our recommendation.
Okay,
Yes.
the 13 to 20. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I wouldn't necessarily base it on old documents or anything else. I would base it on what you think today
Yes,
is for village center.
I agree with
Just
that.
to be clear, that's the
Thank you.
sub-working group's recommendation, right? Because we haven't all voted on that language.
Sure.
Okay,
Well, this is the working group that has worked on this for 2 years. And
right, but
put
that
on
doesn't
the
mean the rest of
planning.
us have to agree to it. That doesn't mean
No,
it's
no, I'm just saying that this is
understood.
the working group's recommendation. Yes.
Understood.
Mike,
Yep.
if I could insert, we have been over this a number of times and going through land use with the task force. And we've discussed this exact issue in the past as we've gone through it.
If you want to see 50, Lynn has a drawing of 50. It's comical, I'll tell you.
Are you going to make me look for that?
Well, I don't know where the votes are going. I just, if we're going to vote on 50, we should know what we're voting on. We want to be sure that it actually fits. But the recommendation.
Here it comes. There it is. That's it.
That's taking the Heron House and putting it, the number of buildings that it would take to make it work. And I believe this is South Lakes. Yeah,
This is
South Lakes.
Chimney House at Hunter's Woods.
Yeah, Hunter's Woods. That's right. So that's 50 units per acre.
It's like Shanghai.
And
Yeah.
just to be clear, because I think we're still, I'll say, talking past one another to a certain extent. I wasn't necessarily advocating for 50 dwelling units to the acre. What I was suggesting is that if we're trying to tie what we're recommending now to the original Reston master plan, the original Reston master plan never recommended residential densities with specific residential densities within any of the village centers. Instead, what ended up happening was, by interpretation, either at the rezoning stage where they were rezoned to PRC, there were limits put in place, such as at Tall Oaks, where it was deemed to be medium density residential, which under the PRC zoning ordinance is 20 dwelling units to the acre. Or if there was no specific recommendation, then the interpretation was that it was intended to be high density, which is 50 dwelling units to the acre. I wasn't suggesting that we are recommending that today. I was just trying to reconcile the difference between the historic references and the PRC zoning categories, which are set in code, as opposed to the plan, which is more of a planning document than an ordinance.
So following on that, and I appreciate that, Mark, I still come back to the place that John Carter and I think, just agreed upon, which is this is today. We have a lot of history. The task force should make a recommendation based on today, what you think the village centers should be planned for.
And I agree with that.
So we all agree on something.
Yes.
Do we need to vote on that?
So, well, I would like to add that this is now reconciled. Instead, it's not just the land use working group, but this is reconciled.
Why don't you vote on the village centers then, as a total,
Yeah,
as a total?
I think we are going to take a vote on the village centers if there's nothing else from any of the other.
I would like to make a motion that we recommend that the village centers be in the 13 to 20 dwelling units per acre range, and that staff double check the language in our draft to validate that they would agree that we have the language correct.
Do you want to go farther, Jennifer, and recommend all the other elements of the village centers as well?
Sure, Lynn, if you want to put that back up on the screen, I'd be happy to list the bullet points.
Of all the village centers?
Yes, all the wording for the village centers, not just the 13 to 20, but the rest, all of it.
Right, that there's no residential sorry, Lynn, you took it back down. So
You want me to put the dashboard back up?
Yeah, I think that's what we're sorry, that's what
Okay.
we're voting on. In addition, I would say have the task force recommend that there's no residential development potential in the plan without an amendment.
Right, that's in there.
So just so can we put the actual language up? Because
It's in column B. So column B is what my motion is, pending a review by staff to validate that the language matches column B under village centers.
So the motion is there's no residential permitted without a further plan amendment. But if there's a plan amendment, the board is limited in what it can choose to implement to somewhere between 13 and 20 per acre.
Great, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes.
Well,
There is already residential in the village centers.
well,
But it's not.
I guess what I'm getting,
it's not
what I'm getting at is, yeah, what I'm getting at is like, if we've already decided that it should be 13 to 20, why not put that in the plan? Number one. And number two, I don't know that that constrains the board's ability to do what it wants to do when there's a plan amendment. That's the whole point of a plan amendment.
Well, there is 13 to 20 in the plan. So if we go to the chapter draft, that is what is in the draft.
But is it before or after a further plan amendment that the 13 to 20 kicks in?
Before.
Because that's different than what I understood Jennifer to be suggesting.
I don't think it's before, Lynn. Any
The 13 to
redevelopment
20
option has to go through.
Well, not Lake Anne.
Yes, Lake Anne is special, but we
Yeah.
have to also remember there is also already residential in the village centers.
So we have, for example, language in South Lakes Village Center. Limited to less than 20 dwelling units per acre. Future residential development must be limited to less than 20. So the language all pertains to
So see, Mark, for instance, on that map of South Lakes, there is residential in the blue.
Oop.
And so I think that the
What-
subgroup, what we talked about was those two areas could, someone could come back and say, I want to redevelop them. But what the subgroup is saying is you can't put any more than what you already got there as far as DUs are concerned.
The blue area. yeah.
Right, but I think on the land use map, we've already changed that designation from village center to residential, and we've given it a certain density range for the already developed residential, and that the limits and boundaries of the village center is essentially the non-residential shopping center. And we're saying that the non-residential shopping center can add up to 13 to 20 units per acre within that shopping center
Right.
as part of a future either redevelopment or infill development. But I don't think the intent is, my understanding was the intent was we're recognizing and locking in the existing residential development that's on the ground today
Right.
and redesignating it to the extent that we need to from village center to residential, and confining the definition of the village center to the existing non-residential area.
Right.
I
That's
would
That's
correct.
not my
see,
understanding.
excuse
That,
me,
that's
so,
that's not my understanding, John. And John, you've been in our small group meetings. The village center is labeled here. In these parcels, 13 to 20 dwelling units per acre is the total among all three.
No. You see the
We're,
acreage?
we've not been talking about adding density to the commercial area of the village centers.
Yeah, yeah, it does. You see the acreage, see those acreages apply to the total as well as the commercial area. So if the commercial area, if it would, if a comp plan amendment comes in, the recommendation of this plan is to limit it to less than 20 units per acre on the commercial portion. The non-commercial or the residential portion, the recommendation is to leave it alone. And it is, I mean, Mark is right that it is awkward to limit the future, but the reason you need a comp plan amendment is there are other features of a village that make a village center besides just the residential, and it's dealing with those other features, why you need a more robust system. We never went into the details of all of the village centers and all their future uses. We all want a grocery store. We all want these institutional uses, maybe a little bit of office, but there's no specificity in those like Lake Ann has. So the concern was not to go above 20 because that the density was getting a little too high when you do that, getting it more like the TSAs rather than the village center looking. So that's what it is. It's the recommendation of this plan would be 13 to 20 for the commercial areas only. The areas outside would remain with no changes. Don't forget there's the 0.25 that also goes in the commercial. So it's 13 to 20 units per acre, 0.25 for the commercial. But to get any residential, you have to do a comp plan amendment. So, and that doesn't
And
that
then
doesn't limit the ability.
then I withdraw my motion because that I will not agree to.
I would like to see if you're going to do 13 to 20, and I noticed when you were talking about Salt Lakes, it was 20, no more than 20. Can it be
Less than
consistent?
20.
They all say 13 to 20 and not just 20.
It actually says
Well, we
less
said
than.
less than 20
Yeah, I
is,
think that's
I
actually
mean,
better.
right now we're talking about 13 to 20. Can't we put that into all of the instances where that is mentioned?
we're
I think
just saying be limited to less than 20 dwelling units per acre because they may want to do less than 13.
yeah.
I see.
So we wanted to be able to be flexible enough to allow for
That's
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
This is Barbara. Can't find my hand, so I apologize. I have no idea where the hand is on this thing. So I want to be sure that we understand what the group is saying, because if I believe that I understand the group to say that the up to 20 cannot happen unless there's a new plan amendment. It cannot happen with this plan amendment. If that's the case, which I believe that's what I'm hearing, we need to tweak this language. So I think it was Lynn's comment, or maybe it was Jennifer's, that we've been given the latitude to make sure that the language reflects the discussion. That's a place where I think we're going to need to tweak the language.
If I can, this is David. If I can,
Sorry, I just want to be
go
very
ahead, Barbara.
specific.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we just want to be very specific. That says that you could get, with a future plan amendment, you could get up to no more than 20.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
This is David. So let me understand something. Are you, in this plan language, are you delimiting the authority and discretion of the Board of Supervisors, who currently could accept a plan amendment that goes to up to 50 dwelling units per acre? Are you trying to delimit that as well as establish the 13 to 20?
No,
They
we're
can't,
saying that
They can't.
no, it's that the Board of Supervisors has the ultimate say. But what we're saying here is that there is no residential redevelopment potential in the plan without an amendment. And that amendment is what would be presented to the Board of Supervisors.
The way
So
I
the-
view it, David, is that it's, everything that was just said is correct. I
Good.
view this language as being something like guidance for when the board would
Yes.
consider a future plan amendment, but it cannot limit the board. They could come out with 500 DUs per acre.
Right.
Obviously, they can do that.
Yeah,
But, right, but this cannot limit them.
Yeah, and Barbara, let me jump in. I the way I would see this is that in order to do that residential up to 20 dwelling units per acre, there would need to be a future plan amendment. But let's also remember that these plan amendments don't just deal with density. They deal with the mix of uses, they would deal with design issues, they would deal with
Absolutely.
how they work with the neighboring communities, pedestrian access, I mean, all sorts of things like that. So the way I would see this language would be that, yeah, you still would need to come back with a plan amendment to address all these other issues. And don't expect more than 20 dwelling units per acre. Now, at that point, the board certainly could go above 20 in the plan amendment, in some future plan amendment, but this would at least set out the guidance for that effort.
That's
Thank you,
exactly it.
Walter.
That's exactly it.
That's a good way to.
And one other thing, and along the lines of Jan's comment, then I think the language in each of these statements should be the same, which is 13 to 20 dwelling units per acre, not something else. Like at some point they say less than 20 units per acre, 20 dwelling units per acre. Keep it consistent. Make sure that each of the segments that deals with each of the village centers says the same thing.
Right now, they all say less than 20, I believe.
Right, yeah, because we're saying it doesn't have to be 13. Why would we force 13 in if somebody wants to do 12?
They are consistent.
Yeah, they are
And
consistent.
they are logical, this way Lynn explained it.
Well,
So we're giving the county the flexibility that they're looking for in approving these, but we're saying it has to be less than 20, but it could be 10. That's okay. If that's what they want.
Bill, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I think this discussion, which is interesting, shows I don't think we're ready to vote on particular language tonight or tomorrow night, because even the members of the committee that the rest of us weren't in don't agree on what it is they intended. And the rest of us just got it. And so we haven't had time really try and absorb it. So I think it's useful to discuss it and hear it, but I'm not sure it's time for voting already.
Well, we voted on
Also,
this
I
a
would
long
just,
time
also
ago.
for what,
We
also,
voted.
also for what it's worth, if I look on this screen, the page numbers aren't shown, but it says number 46 of 62. And if I look on page 62 of what I printed out, I thought from this, page 62 isn't the village centers. That doesn't show up till page 53. So something's odd about the what's on the screen. It may be, I just don't know what it
Well,
means.
don't worry about the pagination, Bill. It's,
That's
no,
pretty
we're looking at
significant
the village
difference.
centers. We are looking at the village centers. And this text is what was previously voted on by the Comprehensive Plan Task Force. So
Okay.
why are we,
It helps to know that, except that it's listening to the discussion, it sounded like there wasn't agreement as to what it meant. Even among the people who have had time to spend a lot of time to spend on it.
well, yeah, you are right about that. And that's, yeah. So maybe we're not ready to vote on the village center chapter.
Lynn, what is your pleasure? The village. Center
Well,
chapter.
I think I'll just flag this as something we can come back to, and perhaps we can think about it overnight and come back and vote on it tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So I'd like
Lynn,
to
keep on
then
going.
move on. Yep, I'd like to then move on to the
They can.
we are now moving on to the convenience centers. So we had discussion with staff on convenience centers. I think this was Bill Malin that noted that there are numerous commercial. This was the introduction and vision that the, pardon me? Did you want to say something, John? Carter?
Me? No, no.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. So within the current plan text for convenience centers, there was a lot of text that the working group decided to remove from convenience centers in the spirit of brevity. I think that we would all appreciate that. And so a lot of the text was removed. So you'll see here, this is the text that was, if you look in the right navigation pane, there was a comment from Bill Mayland who added what introductory text and vision was originally included. And so yes, the task force, the working group cut this text in favor of brevity. So we have reduced it to the introduction to just say that convenience centers are locally serving retail and office and scope and location. We go into recommendations for the convenience centers, and then we address each convenience center as its own entity, and we provide graphical portrayals of each of those centers. And I think that is, that's it. We have indicated a 0.25 FAR for each of these convenience centers. So I would ask, given the brevity of the chapter, you've all had an opportunity to read it. I think I sent this out Friday night. It's one page.
for God's sake. I think
Make the
that,
motion that we accept the convenience center section of the land use chapter of the Reston Comprehensive Plan.
is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Gary. Any discussion? I'm not able to actually conduct the vote, Walter, so
Yeah,
could I
okay.
ask
good.
you
All
to?
right, I'm ready.
Could I ask one question?
Sure,
Apart,
Bill, go
Yes.
ahead.
apart from the one the one deletion to make it shorter, is the language in the 0.25 the same as what was in the last time? What was approved?
It's what was approved by the task force at
Yeah,
the
that's what I
last
mean.
vote. Yes.
So, okay, that's the only thing I needed to know. Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to take a vote?
Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of endorsing this section of the chapter, convenience centers, please raise your not your right hand. Please raise your electronic hand in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I count 14. Okay, go ahead and everyone take your hand down. Okay, everyone. Shall go. There we go. All right. Now, all those opposed to endorsing this convenience center section, raise your hand in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I see one opposed. Now, go ahead and take your hand down and let's go to abstentions. All abstaining, please put your hand up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I see one abstention. Okay, that motion carries. Lynn, keep going.
Thank you, Walter. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone who voted. Okay, let's move on to other commercial areas. Now, when we voted on this originally from the task force, the working group proposed omitting Laurel Way because it was outside of the Reston Plan community. And we said, despite its built-out status, that we would reconsider its inclusion. So after a bit of back and forth with staff, we decided to reconcile this, and we've included it back into this section as an orphan property. So that is one inclusion that you will see. So the FARs, you will see this is one of the areas on the dashboard that we're going to be going back to. Now, each of these has a recommendation of 0.25 FAR. And again, I will point to, and here we have Laurel Way that is added back in to the other commercial. But I do want to, again, give thanks to Bill Mayland for his research in helping us identify what the implications of this 0.25 FAR is to the plan. So staff, so column B is the land use working group recommendation, and column C is staff comments. So staff comments here regarding the implications of that 0.25 FAR for Barron Cameron results in an increase of 63,000 square feet. For Bowman Green, it indicates an increase of 5,300 square feet. And Laurel Way, which is heavily concentrated medical, would add about 6,000 square feet. So in discussion, as a land use working group, we felt that these increases of square footage were acceptable and would provide retailers, service providers an opportunity to increase the sizes of their businesses within the existing footprint. So the land use working group considered this reconciled in that we are sticking with the 0.25 FAR as it is, despite an inherent increase to the square footage of the site. So I think other commercial areas is ready for a vote from the task force. Is there a motion to accept this subchapter?
I make a motion, we accept this section of the chapter on other commercial areas of the land use chapter for the Reston Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you,
All right,
Tammy. Is there a
Tammy makes the
second?
motion.
I second that motion that Tammy just made.
All
Thank you,
right,
Gary.
let's go to discussion. Lynn, I see Bill has his hand up.
Again, just a simple question. Is there anything that's changed other than Laurel Way being put back in?
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, let's get ready to vote. Well, actually, since there's nothing changed, let's just do this. Is there anybody who has an objection to this endorsement of the other commercial areas section? All right, then let's just do this as a without objection then. So
Okay.
consider that endorsed. Keep going.
Thank you, Walter. Appreciate it. Okay. We are ready to move on to Reston neighborhoods. Now, this area, as you all will recall, we did quite a bit of work in redoing this subchapter, and I appreciate the task force voting for the language that we are looking at here. And there are a few changes to what the task force previously approved. And that has to do with the land west of Stewart Road. So again, Bill Mayland noticed that this removed the current language for the land west of Stewart Road and asked if that was intentional. And we came back and said that this was cut because it was outside the Reston Plan community. It remains in the Area 3 plan. And we asked staff if there was a reason that we should reconsider its inclusion, especially since it has already been developed. So
Could you put the map up? Maybe that would help people understanding.
this map,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah.
Which
Yeah,
number
so-
was that?
It
I'm
should be
sorry?
number 10 on the map, John.
10, yeah.
It's at far upper left side of the map.
Here,
Right, there it is.
Yeah, there
That's
it is.
it.
right. Can you all see my cursor?
Yeah, that little square. Yep, we can see it.
Yeah, you can see my cursor circling 10. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so that had been developed. So the working group felt that it was appropriate to leave that out.
Because it's already built, because it's already built, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It is already built, has no reason to be in. there was discussion, this area adjacent to the western edge of Lake Fairfax Park. So staff asked if it was worth considering adding language about preservation of open space. And we felt that that was a great suggestion. So we did add a statement, preserve the large tree stands and open space for area number 3. And we have called that reconciled. Thank you, Bill, again. Charter Oak Apartments. We had some edits to the original language that you all approved previously. And we feel that the edits that Bill Mayland made to number 5, Charter Oak Apartments, is consolidates the text without losing the key points that we wanted to make. So we have considered that reconciled. Again, thank you, Bill. And then moving into Deepwood
Hey,
Townhouse.
Lynn,
Yes.
one second on that one. I can't recall, is that recommendation in the current comprehensive plan, or is that a new addition to it? I can't recall.
Charter Oak Apartments is not in the map. As my recollection, we have added this because the current land use map, we feel incorrectly designates that as a high density development, and there is nothing that we can find to substantiate that designation, and there are no approvals. So Charter Oak Apartments is the density on the land use map should be 13 to 20 DUs per acre.
So if I can, it was developed at 20
Thank you,
per
Bill.
acre, but there is a development plan approved at high density. But the development does fall under the 13 to 20 category. It's not developed per the development plan of high density. And remapping it at medium is consistent with what was done in the 2015 amendments, where there are a lot of development plans or land use plans that showed a medium high, but it got developed at a low or a medium level, and the land use plan was generally reconciled on what was existing, because the intent was that the existing developments stay as is with limited areas for redevelopment outside of the TSA.
Yeah, I get that. I that's what I thought, Bill, was that the zoning allowed something higher than what's on the ground today. And did the 2015 updates not replan that for the 20 DUs per acre or whatever is on the ground today? Did it not remap it in 2015?
It did not remap it. The way they did the 2015 mappings is they did it on a tax map basis as opposed to development plan basis. So when you looked at Charter Oaks on a tax map basis, if I remember correctly, they mapped one of them at 50 plus 20 units per acre. They mapped another portion at either medium or high, I forget. And the third one they mapped as open space. So the original development plan for Charter Oaks is 3 tax map parcels. And when you extrude the density over the 3 tax map parcels, it's at 13 to 20, even though it was development plan at 50. It just got mapped on a tax map basis, not on a development plan basis.
So setting aside, I guess, what the development plan says for a second, is there a reason that you're choosing to call this out with specific text versus simply remapping it consistent with whatever the density is that you want it to be at? In other words, there have to be other examples where something is underdeveloped relative to its approved zoning. And I don't know that we're calling out all of those areas as well. And so I guess the question is, why are we choosing this to do it here, but not necessarily do it other places.
Well, I think this is a difference that is so great than what was previously assumed that we wanted to make sure that it was very clear.
It's actually the other way around, Mark. This is the only one of all the parcels that's different. This was mapped differently. I don't know why. All the rest of them were mapped as 13 to 20.
I guess where I was going, John, is if I think what Bill is describing is that the approved development plan is for higher intensity than what actually got developed on the site. That's a different question than what the plan designation is relative to what's on the ground today. And that's where I was just driving at is I have to assume, in fact, I know that there are other sites that are underdeveloped relative to their approved zoning, but we're not necessarily changing the plan, or we're not adding text, I'll say, to deal with the fact that there's underdevelopment relative to what the approved zoning shows. That's why I'm just curious as to why we're choosing to do it here, but not elsewhere.
Well, I don't know that we were able to put our fingers on any approved development plan.
You want to look at the map? Maybe the map would be clear, the land use map.
Bechtel or where the Microsoft building is I think a similar
So
example.
again, I have seen the development plan and have provided it in the past. It simply just says high density residential. And that's the level of detail that was provided at those times.
Yeah.
Right.
See, point out using your cursor where we're talking about.
I
Yeah.
think the important part from our perspective is that this and St. John's Wood
Harrison is here.
were
Okay.
two areas that were not specifically replanned the last time. And as Bill said, the last replanning in the PRC brought people down to what they were built at, irrespective of what they were zoned for. And so those two properties had some inconsistencies with the previous planning effort, which has raised questions over time. And I think
Right.
our desire, and probably those of the subgroup as well, was to provide clarity, particularly for these two sites.
Yes.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, I get that,
Spot
Barbara.
on.
I guess the question is, why go to the extent of putting it in text as opposed to just reconciling the differences in the map? That's all.
I think just clarity.
It is clarity.
So staff has also told us that they want to make sure that the text reflects it, and one of the reconciliation items was that the map was an example, but the text is what dominates the plan, not the map. If that helps.
Okay.
Any other questions, Mark? Did that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, no more questions.
Okay, thank you.
Can you
All
change
right.
the text for the Charter Oak to 13 to 20 instead
Yes,
of?
it's changed in the text.
It is here.
Oh, good.
The density shows 13 to 20 DUs per acre.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, Jan.
Most of it's already 13 to 20 acres. We're just adding that little piece.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And it's built at less than at 13 to 20.
Right.
So the comment on Deepwood Townhouse development from staff was questioning whether the call out was still needed since it does not have redevelopment potential, and that we had generally removed other call outs, and the working group felt that this was required to stay as is. For Deepwood Townhouse development. And we go into the recommendations for single-family neighborhoods. This is attached and detached, consistent with the Reston vision and planning principles. Now, I had made a typo in this, and I had put a minimum of 8% or more, and Bill corrected me and said this is 85% in the current plan. So we've got the 85% or more of the owners, and must at a minimum account for 85% of the land area being proposed for modification. And then the recommendations for multifamily.
You'll
Yeah,
see.
that is.
I don't know if it's worth pointing this out, and I'm not trying to bring controversy in that. Could you bring up that language a little bit more? Now, we've struggled with this, and if you want to ignore this, it's fine, but I just wanted to point it out. You can see the language. There's no must or will or shall, any of that. These are active verbs at the beginning, so you don't need to use those words like must or shall.
Right.
We don't have to argue about that. So I prefer this kind of language. I know we can't go back and change all of the others, but these are done nicely in parallel. So you got protect, retain, create, maintain. Those are actual recommendations in the plan. So.
I just noticed a typo here. I need to unbold protect.
Yeah.
That should not be bolded. So we'll take care of that when we get into the final plan language, when this gets incorporated. But if everyone is there a motion to accept Reston neighborhoods? We have the Reston National and Hidden Creek Country Club have moved to, they were on the previous Reston neighborhoods map. Those are now moving to number 1. 2 and 3 need to be flip-flopped in terms of what they refer to. And we understand that Fairfax County staff GIS mapping group is running a little behind, so it might take a little bit longer than we expect to see any changes to these maps for the final chapter, but we're certainly willing to take on that duty if need be. But is there a motion to accept the Reston Neighborhoods chapter as presented?
I so move to accept the Reston Neighborhoods chapter.
And I second Jan's.
Jan, Gary, Walter, I don't mean to take over your management of the meeting, because I know
you're
how
doing
Robert's
great, Jan.
rules is, so.
No, you're doing great. Let's go ahead and vote, though.
Well, is there discussion?
Oh, that's true. Sorry. Discussion.
Yeah.
Just the standard question. Are there any other substantive changes that we ought to be aware of?
No.
Okay. Any other discussion?
This is Jennifer.
Jennifer.
It still worries me that we say recommend, and again, I would like staff to review this section to ensure that we have the strongest language possible. This is our neighborhood area. It's most of the, PRC properties. And I want it to be as strong language as we can have. And recommends just doesn't feel strong enough to me.
You have a suggestion? Could change.
No, we've been going back and forth with Barbara on, what does this sentence mean? How would this sentence be interpreted? And that conversation is ongoing. Michelle and Barbara have been going back and forth. And so that's my fear with this, with us approving it, is that there's still a little bit of back and forth with Barbara on how we can make the language as strong as possible, especially in these PRC areas. I think that the residents of Reston would want us to do that. This is the biggest
point,
piece
Jennifer.
for the residents of Reston.
I think, you know, we don't have to come back for that. We can vote on, I mean, yeah, we can vote on this, and if there's any stronger language, that can be made sure it's put in there by Bill and Lynn and John.
I really think that this is the strongest language possible. I think when the staff gets this and measures it against an application, that what needs to be understood is, what does the plan recommend? What does the plan actually say? And I think the attempt is to make this very clear in the front of each sentence, and that rather than adding things like shall or must, which seems to deaden the recommendation to me. But when the staff does their write-up, they're interested in consistency with the comp plan. And so you've got to preserve the natural, you got to redistribute the density, you've got to create a variety of building types, you got to preserve more trees. I think that is the strongest language that you could have for a comp plan, recognizing that it is a guide to a certain extent.
Would you
I,
agree with that, Bill and Barbara?
I would be interested in what Barbara and Bill think, but we don't necessarily
I
have to.
agree, John. Yeah, John, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Bill is welcome to chime in as well, but I think it's a really good way to structure this, and it is very strong, and that's how we would take it.
I agree.
but does somebody, like if you live in a single family house and we have a picture, it says below, example, single family detached units, 0.1 to 5 BUs per acre, right? So I have an acre, I have a single family house. Somebody wants to come in, buy my property and put a duplex on it. Does this language protect from that?
Well, you would have to meet all those points to establish consistency with the comprehensive plan. Preserve natural areas, redistribute the density, create a better community plan with more usable open space, creation of a greater variety of building types, better suited to attached preservation of trees, stream valleys, and vegetation. So you have to meet all those things.
Right, so redistribution of density.
To
Of
create a
what?
better community plan with more usable open space.
There's a further thing for Jennifer's concern to a single lot that is not the case. Zoning puts residential to a group of lots, to a subdivision, to be consistent. So that concern, I think, is somewhat muted between the plan as well as the zoning ordinance. Need to consider both equally. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Glad to hear your voice.
So I think that
Any other
there might,
discussion?
I've had my hand up. Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, sure,
Okay,
Michelle.
so
Sorry, I didn't see that.
that's okay. So I think there's two issues here. One is the use of the active verb, which appears to be okay with staff, but the other issue is just with the word recommendations itself. And what does that mean? This recommendation, does it not have to be followed? And so if we could at least have time to clarify how the word recommendation would be interpreted by the county attorney's office, I think that would provide better assurances.
Michelle, if I could just jump in, I think this is a situation where it's not the county attorney, it's the board of supervisors that are ultimately gonna make that call.
And what does recommends mean to you then, Walter?
Yeah, that's the question. It really is, Jennifer. No, I agree with John Carter and Barbara. You know, I take the comprehensive plan extremely seriously. I'm more of a fundamentalist on that.
But to be
I
fair,
think
you've
it
also
is-
told us that we have to be careful on who we vote for, and that we don't always know who's going to be the supervisor, and
You're
that there's
absolutely
also
right.
you're
You're
not
right,
the only
Michelle. I'm not
one.
going to be here forever. That's right.
So I just, I think that it wouldn't. I mean, we're just asking for just, is there a better word than recommendations?
Any other ideas on that or any other discussion?
Hey, Walter, this is Chris Daniel. I just had my 10
Chris.
cents I wanted to add.
Chris.
Please.
I kind of read Jen's statement as saying we just want to emphasize in this vote that staff weigh and consider that when this moves forward, if there's a better word, that be considered. Not that she was suggesting a word right now. Like, it was more of a kind of a statement on top of the motion of we're approving this, or we might approve this, with the caveat that staff, when they move forward to the process, should keep in mind that if there's a better word, they should consider it. That's how I kind of read it.
Yes, that's
Not
what I'm saying,
necessarily
because
trying to wordsmith.
agreed. We can't wordsmith today here, but I just want staff to recognize that of all the of all the pieces of the chapter, you know, these probably are not recommendations from the task force. These are things that we actually want followed to the T.
So Jennifer,
So what word can we use to make sure that happens? Definitely in this section.
so Jennifer, it's Barbara.
Yeah.
So, and I can't see the whole context of this, but what if you just took off recommendations 4 and just say multifamily? And then it goes on and says what multifamily is supposed to do. And you have townhouses or whatever else you have there, single family attached. And maybe you just take off the recommendations 4 and then use the land use type as your heading and the rest of your words follow. Would that make you more comfortable?
Yeah,
I think that
after you guys review it, if you think that's the best course of action to get us there, I'm all for it.
Okay, thank you.
But to be clear, it's not just the titles. The word recommendation is used elsewhere too. So we just need to be sure that the clarifying language ahead of it also uses the word.
How about propose or
I think this needs to go forward, as Jennifer's just pointing out, and Chris Daniel.
Right. I'm not looking for word changes tonight.
Right.
Okay.
I just want to make it clear that the task force really does believe in the text that's in this section, and we really want it followed. So whatever words you guys could come up with to make that clear.
Well, you're talking about land use as a whole, aren't you, Jennifer?
I do think it does fall throughout the land use chapter, and I would ask for that, but some specific emphasis on this piece, I think, is very important to the task force.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, and let me just say, Jennifer, I totally get it. I mean, this is basically the core of the recommendations that we didn't get in the last update of the comprehensive plan. So, looking at these neighborhoods. So thank you.
what about impel or enjoin?
I think it's in Bill Mailing's and Barbara's.
Yeah, we'll consider that, Jan. Thank you for ideating with us.
Okay, Lynn, what is your pleasure?
Well, I think that what I would like to do is ask for a motion to accept the Reston Neighborhoods chapter as presented, with the possibility of further staff or further language to strengthen the recommendations.
Okay.
Make a motion that we approve the Reston Neighborhoods Plan with the ability for further review by county staff.
Well, I think you should task the task force too. Don't just limit it to the county staff. Say, the motion should also say county staff and task force if you come up with a better word.
I think it's.
Well, I think since staff is the one that is going to be using the comprehensive plan as they evaluate applications that are coming forward, we want staff to give us that guidance on what language is going to help them
argue for protecting these requirements that we are looking for.
Yes.
So that's the motion I'm making.
Okay.
But can we at least acknowledge that that it should come back to the task force so that we
Yes.
can, thank you.
Okay.
So do you want to amend your motion, Gary?
I'll amend the motion to approve this as written with the understanding that the county staff will look for stronger language, especially the recommendations, to make sure this goes forward as we intend, and that it come back for the task force as a report of what that is.
Is there a
Okay.
second? Did you second, Jan? I didn't hear.
So I second the motion, yes.
Jan seconded. So Gary moved. Jan seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Jennifer, is your hand up? Oh, no, sorry, it came down. Michelle?
No, I'm taking my hand down.
We're ready to vote.
Okay, all right. So, Lynn, are you ready to vote? Oh, David Vanel has his hand up.
That's just a thought, folks. If we keep asking for staff to resubmit this to us, we are never going to get done with this task. We've beaten this thing into submission. Just let the staff fix it and move on.
Yeah, David, I have a suggestion. Maybe the idea is for the any changes before the final approval by the task force of the compendium of recommendations. Maybe at that point. So
I will amend my motion to reflect what you just suggested, Supervisor Alcorn.
yeah. So basically, at the final approval.
Final approval.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And Jan, you amended? All right.
I second it, yes.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, then let's have everyone in favor of the motion of this endorsement with the possibility of staff coming up with stronger language prior to final approval by the task force. Please raise your hand electronically in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I think I see 13. Yes.
Walter, it's Moira. I mean to raise my hand, but I can't figure out how.
All right, we'll say 14 then with Moira. All right, no problem. Thank you for speaking up. Okay, everybody take your hands down that voted. Okay, then all opposed to the motion for this endorsement, raise your hands in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I see 4 opposed. Let's call for abstentions. Okay, everyone who would like to abstain on this vote, raise your electronic hand in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and I see 1 abstention. So that motion carries, Lynn.
Okay. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Supervisor Alcorn. I think that concludes our agenda tonight, and it is 9 o'clock.
I just want to make one comment real quick. Someone said that they didn't know how to raise the hand. I didn't at the beginning. But if you look down at the very bottom, there are 3 things in the row. And at the bottom, right before participants, and then the very one on the left, it says raise your hand.
Oh, yeah. You know what? The thing is, my phone is like on 9%, and so
it's on
nothing
your
seems
phone.
to work anymore.
It's on the phone.
But I do normally know, but thank you.
I didn't. Okay. I figured it out. All right.
Walter, thank you. I think we've accomplished what I was hoping to this evening.
I concur.
Thanks for all your
You're
hard
on
work,
mute.
Lynn.
You're on mute, Walter.
Thank you. I was giving my shout outs to you and
Oh,
but also I want to also thank Bill Mayland and Barbara Byron. Bill's I know really
Yep.
worked closely with you, Lynn and John.
he has. Yeah, he's
So-
awesome.
So thank you all very much. And Len, we're going to come back tomorrow
Yep.
and do some more, right?
Yep. So tomorrow night on the menu is the first half of the land use chapters. So we'll be starting off with the introductory text, and then we'll be getting into the TSAs. So I'm looking forward to that, and hope everyone is able to join again tomorrow night, because
Fantastic.
your votes are so important.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lynn, very much. Thank you, everybody. We'll see everyone same time, same place tomorrow evening. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you,
all.
Lisa.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Walter.
Bye-bye.